Go to Iran, or is it Irene? And she says they will always give up early on, give up on guys too early. We're talking about Padres here, by the way. They always give up on the guys too early. That Washington trade still was the worst in history.
Well, you'd have to connect all the dots. She's making reference, obviously, to Soto coming, then Soto leaving. But some of the components also allowed them to get Dylan Cease. But at the end of the day, and this is my beef with my neighbor, A.J. Preller, is if you overpay for everybody and then you never stick around to see if they ever pan out and you use them to trade, you're never going to have a farm system, and you have no insurance if anybody gets hurt or somebody gets old. And now he's got a much older roster with nothing in the farm system at all, and he's kind of capped out budget-wise. So he has to win this year or next, because I swear to you, and people are going to hop on and say, oh, you're being negative. I'm being honest. There's no future for Padre baseball if they don't get to the World Series this season or next season, because there's no farm system left. And the roster is so top-heavy with older players on long-term contracts. You agree or disagree with me?
Well, top heavy. I mean, look about Jerks and Profar, 1 year deal, $1 million, So Preller's got flexibility. Preller is plotting. He's scheming. This is his World Series right now. He's not going to sleep for the next, 28 hours probably.
It better be.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think the Padres, I like the aggressive approach. The deal with Washington, they gave up a ton. But, if you really kind of break it down, they got really good value, in terms of having Soto and who they flipped Soto for.
That's where we are. But at the end of the day, he's traded 9 of the top 12 minor leaguers in the system now.
Yeah, but you can, like we said, we can always replenish, and it's not empty. I mean, you still have Salas and DeVries and, Snelling. So it's still an okay shape.
All right. Thank you for the question. Next one.
Okay, let's go to John. He says the Padres are in, quote, win it all. There is no tomorrow, end quote, situation. I hope these players have some longevity. Otherwise, it's going to be years just to clear the books and afford the rebuild. That's what you just said.
Well, exactly. But again, AJ knows players. I'm a big subscriber in his boots on the ground philosophy of how you find these guys and do well. I like the makeup of the bullpen. But at the end of the day, there's no prospects left. The cupboard is really bare. John doesn't care. John only cares about capitalism and what's going to happen in the Dodger series and how long we're going to be talking baseball in October.
Well, yeah, you got to build the minor league system, but the prime directive is the MLB team to make it competitive. And the Padres had this great road trip, 7-2. They're rolling. If they can take care of business with the Dodgers, it might turn out pretty good.
Okay, ever the optimist from left field. Thanks, John. Go ahead. Next one.
All right, the practicing guitarist says, Lee, John, it is evident that this team seems to play fine, arguably better without Tatis. Look at 2022 in this recent run. Thoughts on moving him?
Well, he's got a long-term contract. I mean, unbelievably long. It was, I think when he signed it, it was 14 years total. I don't think they're going to trade Tatis. I guess the remarkable thing is dudes are in the pennant race or kind of hanging in the pennant race without their number 1 and 2 starters and without El Nino. That's pretty impressive. Or is it just the fact, thank God, they're playing the lowly Washington Nationals and all the other bad teams in baseball? I don't know. But they're hanging in there right now. And I mean, if they can win back-to-back versus the Dodgers and get this sucker down to 4.5 games, and then they play 15 straight against Colorado, Miami, Pittsburgh, first place is really right there in their sightlines. But they have to do it, and they haven't shown they could do this with any consistency at all.
Better without Tatis? No way.
No, I don't think so either.
I mean, they got that Johnson guy playing right field.
Yeah, he have the 157 batting average.
Yeah, and then David Peralta, who had a nice run a number of years ago, but he's past his prime. They're going to be better without Tatis. And by the way, Tatis is in the dugout with them right now. So if he's a cancer, you think it would be affecting the team now, but it's not. So Tatis coming back, Xander's hitting. The sky is looking good right now, Lee.
El Nino's missed a lot of baseball. I mean, you think of all the injuries.
Oh, God, yeah.
The wrist surgery, the drug suspension, and now this thigh injury. He's not doing anything baseball-related because he still can't. Mm-hmm. MRIs have been clean, showing healing in the thigh bone area, but he's not doing baseball-related start, stop, side to side.
Well, I saw him playing catch in the outfield.
Yeah, but that's soft toss.
But that's at least something.
So that's where we are. Okay, thank you for the comment.
Okay, let's go to Angel. Because finally, the Padres are gaining ground on the Dodgers. And if they could sweep or even take one from LA, they may have a shot at the NL West or HFA in the wild card. What's HFA?
You got me home field advantage, I would assume.
Yeah, that's probably
Yeah,
what it
I
is.
mean, yeah, you get the best of 3 first round, pal. You want it in your yard. I concur with you. So we'll see. I mean, this is an opportunity. Nobody was paying attention to the schedule. I looked at the schedule at the end of last week. I said, holy cow, 15 straight against the Rockies, the Marlins, and the Pirates. So, Angel, it's right there in front of them. Next question.
Okay, who we got here on the list? We'll go to Casey. And Casey says, I hope the Dodgers got another move up their sleeve, as Kopech era scares me, and an injured utility guy. Still hoping they add a closer like either Tanner Scott or Kyle Finnegan.
They're trying hard with Washington to get Finnegan, the left-hander, but man, the Nats are barking for a big price. So the burning question is, the Dodgers still do have a lot of hot prospects, Outman, Gavin Lux. They got AAA pitching standing in line. Would you rather spend it to get the ace of the Tiger staff, Tarek Skubal, the left-hander, or just rather pay a little bit less and just go get Finnegan? They've had so many starts and stops with the guys coming off rehab in the rotation, the Kershaws, the Buehlers, who's ready, who's not ready, who suffers a setback after they get here. So I tend to think they probably will go after either Skubal or maybe Jack Flaherty. Now, the Yankees are out there, and the Yankees are rumored going after those two same guys. And the Yankees have got a plethora of hot prospects, notably at AAA. So Yankees-Dodgers will be playing the Price is Right, and which deal will Detroit take? Or maybe Detroit trades them both. Maybe they trade Skubal and they get Flaherty, and then they get a Brinks truckload of hot prospects from both the Yankees and Dodgers. So between now and 3 p.m. Tuesday, it's going to be interesting.
How do they decide when the trade deadline is going to be? Because it's not always the same date on the calendar, is it?
More recently, it's been around August 1st.
Yeah.
Now, there was a move afoot. It used to be the 15th. Prior to that, I think it was August 31st. But they did not want the pennant race impacted right at the end of the season. So they moved it into August. It was just kind of a weird conversation that baseball had with the union about, is everybody going to sell all their players the last month of the season? I mean, Detroit take everybody off their roster and send them to all the pennant contenders. And is that fair to Detroit fan? But it was the 15th, and then got bumped up to the 1st, and something because of the calendar this year, it goes to July 30th.
Yeah, because usually, obviously September's off limits because people are trying to build their playoff roster. They used to be able to do the waiver deals in August. Mm-hmm. That's off the table. But this trade deadline, sometimes it's August 1, sometimes it's July 31, sometimes it's July 30.
But that's only a couple of days.
Yeah, a couple of days, but I'm just wondering why it's inconsistent. I don't know.
I think way back, and this has to go back decades. I think it used to be June 15th. I mean, it was really weird. Why there'd be a trade deadline in June? But I think way back in the day it was. But the union gets involved in that. And baseball's trying to protect the integrity of some of these clubs, too, that you just can't conduct a fire sale and screw your fans, period, exclamation point. So,
well, if I'm the Dodgers, I'm going all in, man. You got Ohtani, Mookie's coming back. They got to go for it.
Next question.
Let's go to Callan. Hey, Lee, all of us on here are sports junkies. What's your go-to Olympic event? Have to say these games have been extremely entertaining.
As a broken down distance runner, I love track and field. I love seeing the involvement of our sprinters. I mean, what we've seen with these sprinters has just been phenomenal. What Richardson's going to do in the women's 2 sprint events, what Noah's going to do in the 2 men's 100, 200, trying to double there. I mean, those are fascinating things to watch. But, I sat there mesmerized watching Simone Biles on the balance beam last night. And she's competing with a calf injury, and she pulls off a near 15 perfect score. I said, wow. I watched just a snippet today of Japan upsetting China and getting the gold in all-around gymnastics.
Wow.
All these different events. So I'm a huge track and field guy, but I like watching some of the other stuff. And then obviously I love the Winter Olympics because I'm from snow country. And, I love to see the downhill. I love to see the ski jumping. It's just fascinating
Like
stuff.
Eddie the Eagle.
That's right. Callum, thanks for the question.
Yeah, I know. Speaking for myself, I was watching some of the men's rugby,
Yeah.
and I had never really watched rugby, but you can see how it's similar to football and similar to soccer, and I'm trying to understand the rules as it plays out. I was watching a women's cycling event, and in the rain, riding over cobblestones, and the bike slips out from under them,
Yep.
because it's terrible conditions given the rain. But this is just a spectacular time. I love it all. Bring me more Olympics more of the time.
You're big on breakdancing. They're going to give medals out for breakdancing.
Breakdancing. You talking about breakdancing?
Speaking of rugby, for the old Canada Network, the genesis of the Canadian Football League was rugby back in the early 1900s. That was a rugby game that evolved into the Canadian Football League.
Interesting.
Back in the day.
I didn't know that.
See?
Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Greg. Lee, I believe there are too many interleague games. My suggestion is have all interleague games possibly in April so the teams can have more games within their division.
Well, I don't know that playing the Rockies 19 times a season. See, I think you and I, Greg, don't agree with this. And I think John is on my street corner for once in his life. I like the fact that we're playing everybody in our division 13 times rather than 19. I like the packaging that everybody in the American League is going to come in here over a 2-year window. We'll get to see the entire American League at our ballpark. They'll, half of them will be here this year. We go somewhere this year. Next year, the other half comes in here. We go to the other ballparks next year. I like that a great deal. The one thing about the interleague, and when they first started it, I think I was talking to Lucchino at that point. There's a novelty to how you market interleague play. In the first couple of years, they set out in June and July as interleague play. So you play everybody in your own league, and we got to June and July, and you went heavy-duty, wall-to-wall interleague play, and it kind of became a specialty thing, So we get to see the Yankees and the Red Sox versus the Dodgers in interleague play in June and July, but now it's scattergunned everywhere. I think it lost a little bit of its oomph. I thought it should be a special event, and it was for a couple of years. I got rid of it.
Well, yeah, it was special at first because it was taboo. You never saw the cross mingling here except in spring training and the World Series. I think they got it right now because it's like the NFL and the NBA season where, you're playing the other teams in the other conference and you play them less frequently than the teams in your own division or your own conference. But I think they're finally getting it right.
Yeah, I think so too. Thanks for the comment, Greg. Next question.
All right, let's go to the Rap Album Depot. He says, everybody who was asked what a LeBron of soccer would look like. Hey, it's Tritney Rodman.
She's a star.
Yeah.
Sophie Smith is a star. Mallory she's become a star. It's really interesting with women's soccer. And we saw this coming about a year and a half ago. We wondered what women's soccer would be. And now, of course, they brought the coach in from Chelsea in England, who's got a great track record reputation of awards and ceremonies. So, Team USA right there in women's soccer globally. And now we'll see where the men are going to go after their second win and move on into knockout round. And remember, in the Olympics, it's under the age of 23. It's a young roster. You're allowed 3 veteran exemptions on the men's roster and the women's roster. But these are 2 really, really young sides for Team USA.
So that under 23 thing applies to the women too.
Yes.
Interesting. I'm all for putting your best players on the pitch, on the court, on the field. I think they should lift that, the 23 limit, because I like it that pros are playing in the league. I like it to see the top stars in the world in the Olympics.
But I buy a piece of that. But I happen to think the NBA playoffs and the championship is the top of the mountain in that sport, and playing in the Olympics against a substandard team from Japan or the Philippines.
Well, the gap's closing in international basketball.
Not everywhere.
Well, but it's closing. And so it's a lot more interesting. I mean, South Sudan almost beat Team USA a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, look what happens in game 2 when they get beat by 53.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Let's go to Richard. Fans Forum here. With Ohtani deferring his salary to help build around him, if this is the only move LA makes, is this considered an epic deadline failure?
No, because if they don't win the division, it's not that they did not make moves or did not try. It's because they got 17 pitchers on the disabled list. I mean, lost in all the argument of why everybody hates the Dodgers is the fact they're still in first place. And Dave Roberts, who an awful lot of people in LA and some in San Diego don't like as manager, he's got them in first place. It's a peaceful clubhouse. And the balancing act with all the personalities and the egos, he's been able to maintain it and done a good job. So if they don't get there, it's a byproduct of how many arms that they have lost. 17. I swear to you, I've never, all the years I've covered this, and I pay attention to all this stuff, I've never seen a team have 17 pitchers on the disabled, and virtually every one of their top starters has been on the DL for shoulder, elbow, surgeries, rehabs, re-injures, etc. At one point, they had none of their starters in the rotation. After they DFA'd James Paxton a week ago, all their top 5 starters gone for a wide variety of reasons. Now they're hoping to get him back. We got 2 months left in the baseball season. So we'll see whether they trade and get Flaherty out of Detroit or Skubal out of Detroit. I think one is going to wind up in LA. The other I think is going to wind up at Yankee Stadium. But I don't think the season will be a failure because they didn't try, because God, they got the highest budget in baseball. It's just a byproduct of you can't lose that many players. And all the dialogue about 17 on the DL, there is no Mookie Betts, there's no Max Muncy coming back either.
I think, yeah, if the Dodgers did nothing, it would be a failed trade deadline. They've got to go for it. You know, they're the number 1 team in the National League in all of baseball, and they got Ohtani. So they're not done. There's going to be a Dodger deal in the next 24 hours.
On we go.
Let's go to Gregory. He says, I don't like that ruling. That leaves, if there are any family of O.J. Simpson, with nothing.
Well, they lost the civil lawsuit. I mean, granted, the trial was a different egg. They lost the civil lawsuit with the same set of circumstances, and the jury awarded them. I don't know that O.J.'s children, who I don't think had very much to do with him in the later stages of his career when he was living in Las Vegas in a hotel, I don't know. The civil ruling is that he had to pay, and he did not pay a dime, and he lived high off the hog in Las Vegas. Thank you, lawyers and appeal courts and all that other crapola. So, I mean, the federal judge ruled they can seize all of the assets from the Simpson estate, and it can be sold and distributed.
Yeah.
Terrible story. My whole attitude toward O.J. Simpson changed after the trial. And then when I found out Nicole Brown Simpson called the police 63 times during her marriage because of domestic abuse cases, my whole attitude towards O.J. Simpson, the person, not the player, the person, totally changed. So I'm biased. The Goldman and the Brown family deserves whatever they can get out of this case because they didn't get it when O.J. was alive.
Yeah, they got to liquidate the assets and pay the bill. I mean, that's justice. You know, just a side note is my mother worked closely and is very good friends with O.J.'s sister. They worked at a similar company. It's the same company in San Francisco for like 15 years. My mom is still convinced OJ's innocent.
I'm not going to
get it.
I'm not going to degrade anything on your family tree.
Okay. Actually, Angel had another good comment here. TNT could have put a few exclusive games on Max. It's just like Amazon. And he's right.
Well, but except they're putting a huge amount of games on Amazon, not 3 games of specialty programming. I mean, the entire package is going to be on Amazon with a lot of pre and post stuff, etc. As I don't agree with a lot of stuff that comes out of Charles Barkley's mouth, but read the fine print, and they didn't read the fine print. In fact, I think this thing may cost the CEO of Warner Brothers his job.
Yeah, this is huge. It's a huge deal. Hey, let's go to social media. We got a bunch of comments over here as well. And here's another comment about the NBA on TNT. This is from Beach Bum. NBA is screwing up here. How many people will stop watching the NBA if there's no inside the NBA? I don't watch too many games, but I watch inside.
I think the insiders are going to wind up somewhere else. Bidding war, I'm sure it's going on already. I mean, Barkley may say one thing on Monday. I'll guarantee you by Wednesday say something else. And by Friday, maybe he's going to announce, we're going over there. We're taking a whole team over there. There will be a quote inside the NBA on one of these other channels.
Well, there's always a new crop of guys that are going to come up. I mean, like Draymond Green, people are saying is the next controversial, Charles
Loudmouth.
Barkley. Yeah. And I was watching that USA Serbia game. I think it was Dwayne Wade was doing the color commentary.
Some people liked him. Some people did not like him.
Oh, I thought he was awesome. I mean, he really gave you some insight of what those players are feeling, what they're going through. And it sounded like more authentic than having some, glitzy, guy behind the microphone.
Yeah. A lot of people thought his insight was kind of cool because he played the game so well. A lot of people also thought, though, because I kind of checked social media. A lot of people thought, there was too much the brotherhood.
No,
my bro.
That was the best part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you always like French pastry. I understand that. Next question.
All right, let's go back to some Dodger comments. This is from Captain Jack. They're doing it because Doc and Pryor are working magic, and the bats keep saving them in most games where we are absolutely outmatched in pitching.
They were overwhelmed in pitching. And I think the most impressive thing to me is how they've fast forwarded and gotten all these kids out of Oklahoma City ready to step up and pitch. I mean, and the stage is not too big. If you just Google Los Angeles Dodger stats in 2024, I think they have now had 33 different pitchers on their roster this season. 33 different arms that Pryor has had to get ready for starts or come in and play the role in the bullpen. Now, none of them have been intimidated. There's only one pitcher I think they finally got rid of, Johan Ramirez, a young reliever who just fell apart on the mound the last couple of weeks, and they DFA'd him over the weekend. He got promptly claimed by Boston, but he's the only one of the young guys that said he doesn't belong here. So I think Roberts has held the clubhouse together with a lot of personalities and a lot of setbacks, and what Pryor's been able to do just to amp these young pitchers up had been pretty impressive. And, if they could get everybody back on the active roster between now and September 25th on the pitching staff, you say, wow, I mean, they got a lot of arms, but each of those arms comes with a risk. I mean, Kershaw may have pitched competitively first time, but how's he going to feel the second time he throws? I mean, you're babysitting him through 4 innings and hope there's not a setback. Then he's got to throw bullpens between starts. No setback there. Can he amp it up and do max effort a second time? And is there going to be a reaction? Because there always seems to be reaction, especially with him and Buehler. And Bobby Miller is throwing 93, 94 in a rehab at Oklahoma City, but he's been up twice and had setbacks twice and had to go back. So going to be fascinating to see what they get done in the next 55 days, 55 games.
Well, the amazing comment here from Captain Jack that caught me by surprise is he's praising Dave Roberts. I mean, the overwhelming majority of people that are reacting to the social media posts that we're doing we're down on Dave Roberts. They think they're winning in spite of his bad decisions.
Well, a lot of that, but again, he's doing what the piece of paper that comes every day in the brown envelope from the analytics department says, we recommend you do this. Mm-hmm. And he's got to compound that with all the bloody injuries. That's a big, big issue. I mean, every time I look, somebody else has got a physical problem on the Dodger pitching staff. And the DL, it's monstrously big. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time as a talk show host and a podcast host, and I write about it. I've never seen a staff have 17 pitchers on the DL.
Well, remember a few years ago, the Padres pitching staff imploded.
Sure.
And we were picking guys up off the street, and it was terrible. I mean, they couldn't keep the team together. The team slipped out of any potential contention. It's incredible the Dodgers are holding this together.
Awful lot of arms in the system. They draft well. They develop well. Now they've had some bad luck with injuries too.
Wow.
Next question.
This is a fun one. This is about the Padres and your take on Ruben Niebla as the MVP. And this is from Boof Time. Is this AI, Hacksaw? No way he says something positive about Padre baseball. I'm here for it.
I think Niebla has done an unbelievable job. And I think Schilt, despite the fact he does not hold people publicly accountable, I think has done a good job. And I think Preller knows talent. Now, how Preller pays for the talent, what Preller does with the talent that he gets, that he moves away. I have a responsibility to you, the fan, to give you the information and to have an opinion on the information. It's not negative all the time. But at the end of the day, in 9.5 years of your general manager's leadership, the team is still sub 500. Has the team been to the World Series yet on A.J. Preller's era? No. So I have to talk about that. I have to call them out because I firmly believe I'm not making junk up. I'm not saying things to get you on the edge of the seat pissed. I'm just telling you what I know. I'm telling you what I think based on the knowledge I've dug up and what I see. So, no, it's not AI. That's Hacksaw being Hacksaw. Stop laughing.
Yeah. So, it's funny is that both Dodger fans and Padre fans
Banging on me.
always like, oh, he's so negative. You're just telling it like it is, like Howard Cosell. Did you ever get to meet Howard Cosell?
I interviewed him a couple of times.
So tell me about that.
He kept over in spring training, covering the Padres very early in my stay in San Diego. And I went over there and there he was. And I never crossed paths with a guy I wouldn't ask to do an interview, but, Ted Williams, whomever. And here's Cosell. He was still at ABC. And I grew up watching Cosell.
Oh, yeah.
I was a Long Island kid. He's a New York lawyer, became a sportscaster. I went up, I introduced myself, and he kind of knew my name. Hacksaw, where did that come from? So I told him the story. and he always referred to me as young man. And, he was huge. He was like 6'4.5", 6'5". He was a
really
big man. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So he said, young man, would you like me to sit in the dugout with you and do this interview? And he was great. He was so smart, so intelligent, so erudite. He was just phenomenal. You remember Chet Forty?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Our friend that worked with us for a year at Extra 690. And Chet, of course, had been with Monday Night Football. He worked with Cosell. To listen to Chet with his New York accent was like listening to Howard with his New York accent. And both of them had unbelievable opinions on anything and everything, and they would tell you, but I laughed because he kept calling me young man.
The part about Cosell that I love is his relationship with Muhammad Ali.
Mm-hmm.
And they would both give each other a hard time, and they both respected and understood one another because they both helped one another. And most people only think of Cosell with Monday Night Football, but yeah, the whole Muhammad Ali is great.
Yeah. Back in the day when Monday Night Football first started taking off, I mean, it was a huge event in the community that the game was in. I remember the early years when I worked in Cleveland, and the Browns were on a Monday Night Football game, and they would hold a luncheon, a press conference and a big luncheon on Monday at 12 noon before the game that night at Cleveland's old Municipal Stadium. And Cosell and Giff and Dandy Don would all be on the dais, and the media would go up and ask him questions. I mean, it was a huge,
That's awesome.
freaking event. And Monday Night Football became must-see TV because of the persona, not just the games, but because of Howard turning to Dandy Don in the third quarter and say, Dandy, your turn. Turn out the lights. The party is over in the third quarter. So.
Well, it was like if your team played on Monday Night Football, you were legit. I mean, it was like, yeah, you got some, street cred. But also remember Howard Cosell and John Lennon, not just that he reported his death on Monday Night Football, but the fact that they used to do things together on Monday Night Football.
Mm-hmm.
So Cosell is unbelievable, in sports history. And it's cool that you're connected to him because you play a part in sports history too.
Young man. He was absolutely funny. I'm trying to remember. Harry Carey used to call me something. I can't remember what the hell it was, and I'm not sure I could put it on the podcast. But
Harry Carey.
Let's do one more here.
Okay, let's talk Yankees and Mets. This is from Paul. He goes, the Yankees hating goes way back before Steinbrenner. My dad, a Brooklyn Dodger fan, loathed the Bombers. He knew the Yanks were able to defeat numerous superior Dodger teams in the 40s and 50s. The Yankees and their fandom are hated because they're so lucky and successful with 27 world championships, 2 times as much as second place, which gives their fans an attitude that they deserve it. Let's go Mets.
Well, the Mets are trying to rebuild, and they probably will. They'll be unbelievably active in the winter and free agency, and I'll be interested to see what happens between now and 6 p.m. Yankee Stadium time on Tuesday, because they're going to make a deal. They got to make a deal to go get a frontline pitcher, and I think at the end of the day, because we're run through the litany list of guys that are there, somebody's going to wind up with Tarek Skubal, the Detroit ace left-hander. The other one's going to wind up with Jack Flaherty, the right-hander, who's coming off injury since had a real unbelievable bounce back season. One might be a Yankee, one might be a Dodger. And then we'll see what happens in the the last month and a half of the season, and we'll see what happens in free agency because Yankees and Mets are probably both going to be, quote, players for Juan Soto.
Yeah, and I think there's the Blake Snell situation too is cooking. So you know what's funny is like in the late 70s, the Dodgers played the Yankees in the World Series, and I was so conflicted as a kid because I was a Giants fan growing up, so I hated the Dodgers. But then the Yankees were like, you know, they were like the Death Star. They were like the Darth Vader, and so I wasn't sure who to root for. But those Yankees teams with Reggie Jackson hitting 3 home runs in the 70s in the World Series, that was a special time.
So is a special Mantle and Maris. So is a special the Yankees in the 40s. So is a special the Bambino in the 20s.
Yeah.
I mean, there is such an unbelievable tradition. I mean, first time I went to a major league game, my dad took me to Yankee Stadium to see my Cleveland Indians.
Because you were a Yankee hater.
Oh, I did not like Mantle, Maris, and Whitey Ford and Yogi, and they were so great. And first time I walked into Yankee Stadium with my dad, I just stood there in awe, and I was floored at the overhang on the top of the stadium with the white, not trellis. What do you call that?
The facade.
Facade.
Yeah.
And then they had the monuments out in center field against the wall, and I thought somebody was buried beneath those monuments. Miller, Huggins, you know, the great Yankees of yesteryear. I thought the monuments was where the bodies were buried.
Well, those are like they look like tombstones.
Yeah, they were exactly.
But were they in? They weren't in play. They were.
They were.
Oh yeah, and like the ball could rattle around in there.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
I remember a game against the old Baltimore Orioles. Somebody hit a ball that got past the outfielder and went and ricocheted off the wall in the back of the monuments. They were tombstones. Now they've moved them after they renovated Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
They moved them behind the wall, and they have all the plaques there now. But back in the day, when I was an 8-year-old, they had 3 monuments in dead center field, and I thought Yankee legends were buried there because it was Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium was like a cathedral.
It's like Donald Trump burying his wives on the golf course.
Oh.
I know when I was a little kid and I went to Candlestick Park for the first time, and it was a day game and it was actually decent weather. I was just so overwhelmed at how green the grass was. And on a blue sky day, it was like, everything was vibrant in color and experience. So those first trips to the ballpark, that's a good time.
Yeah. Coldest winter day I ever spent was watching a game at Candlestick Park in the summer.
In the summer. It was brutal, man. I'm telling you.
Hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed our